check this out. Henry has started to chastise me for using potty words.
What kind of potty words?
I don't know. He's the one who's just like always talking about farts and because he's a 4-year-old boy.
Right.
So, and they really do. And like I don't come in and be like, hey, Henry, fart. None of that. He just like starts talking about it. It's like, where do you like his mother and I do not talk about those things in front of him. I mean, we don't talk about them at all. So it's like, where did you get this shit, kid? Mm-hmm. You don't watch TV, so you're not learning it in this house. So he's learning it at school or at daycare, which is where they all learn it. So I hope he doesn't learn about crystal meth at fucking daycare. But
he's bound to.
Yeah, eventually. Of course, if he's still in daycare at 16, then I guess that's a different story. But so
I think they call that juvie.
Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly, and I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Hi, I'm Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer, editor of Bitch Flicks, and I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Woo!
My name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
Throwing out your fancy co-chair shit.
Yeah.
Oh.
Look out.
This week, we have Cinco movies on the docket, if I counted correctly. Yes. So we got Fractured, Black and Blue, Parasite, Knock Down the House, and Where's My Roy Cohn?
Where is my Roy Cohn?
Where is my Roy Cohn? I mean...
Could have sworn I saw him by the door.
I know. He's in my suit pocket this morning. Shit.
Left him on the coffee table.
Keys,
lip balm,
Roy Cohn.
They all go in there.
I think he's out in the car still.
Can't leave him out there overnight in a night like
He'll
tonight.
freeze.
It's late at night, folks. So, Evan, I think you were going to kick it off with some shit.
Yes.
Some Fractured and some stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about
some
Fractured.
Bleak and Bloy.
Fractured. Let's talk about Fractured.
This is the Sam Worthington movie that's on Netflix?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
The very same.
The same!
Yeah. So Fractured. Sam Worthington plays a father who's a recovering alcoholic. He's coming back from Thanksgiving, I believe, at his parents' house with his wife and his daughter. And they stop to get some gas and some things, and
some Sour Patch Kids?
No, he's tempted with alcohol. His daughter wants batteries for something, and he decides to get.
And he's like, let me drink the battery acid.
Well, he's like, he gets 2 nips, he gets batteries and something else, and
some peanut butter to cover the alcohol.
Yeah,
because that'll work.
Yeah.
And so the woman at the register is like, yeah, you got to pay cash, and he's like, shit, I only have enough for 2 of these 3 things. So he doesn't get the batteries and just tells his daughter that they had no batteries.
Oh my God, what a dick!
Yeah,
I mean,
and then,
that's alcoholic behavior though. So okay,
yeah,
I'll allow it.
The daughter is missing something, so they get out of the car.
Teeth?
No, she's not missing teeth.
I'm sorry. You should have seen the look on his face. Like, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry.
He's not wrong.
I couldn't help it. I just imagined that she was like an English adoptee. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Okay, so she's missing something.
She's missing something. She gets out of the car and wanders away, and then there's this dog, and she's backing away from it, and he's trying to scare the dog away. And as she's backing away from it, she's backing right up into this construction area where there's like a drop. And she falls. And Sam Worthington tries to go after her, and he falls, and they both fall and like hit their head.
Ooh.
Yikes.
And then he like wakes up, and it's like she's hurt, and the wife comes and gets them both, and they're like, all right, let's get to the hospital. So he floors it to the hospital.
He drives?
Wait a minute. How is he driving when he probably has a concussion?
Fucking head wound.
the wife takes the daughter and is like holding her in the back seat.
Oh my god!
And the whole thing was that like earlier he was driving like a wimp, so now he's like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking speed to the hospital, and she's like, yeah.
What?
Yeah, she's
weird.
like turned on by it. It's
what?
like weird.
What is happening in this movie?
Like you get the idea that like he's been kind of a dud since he stopped drinking, and he's just been kind of like not very present as a husband. So he gets in the hospital. They see a very nice doctor played by Stephen Tobolowsky. That's your warning sign right there.
Yeah.
And
if he's not Ned Ryerson, I don't want to be friendly. Yeah.
So then what happens is he goes to the daughter needs to have, I think, a CT scan, and so the wife and the daughter go and they tell him, oh, you can't be there, just two people. So he goes and sits in the waiting room, and then he wakes up several hours later, and he can't find his wife and his daughter, and no one at the hospital has seen them or known them. And
So it's that Jodie Foster movie
basically
where she's on the plane.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there wondering the whole time, because they drop hints that like, oh, maybe this hospital is evil and they stole the wife and daughter to harvest their organs.
Oh.
Or he could be crazy.
Yeah, or he had a head wound.
Yes.
Couldn't he be imagining all of this?
Or it's actually Shutter Island. No.
Oh.
Yes, it's more like that.
Oh.
So the thing is that the daughter did fall and she died, and he hit his head, and when he got up, the wife was, pissed at him, and so he just pushed her, and she fell over on like a piece of rebar and died.
Wait,
too.
what?
Oh, so it's Jacob's Ladder, except instead of being a Vietnam vet, he killed his family.
Yeah, he killed his family, and so it's like he is imagined that the hospital has like taken them captive, and he's just not accepting the fact that he killed his wife and daughter. And so like the whole thing is like he goes deep into the belly of the hospital and steals back what he thinks is his daughter. It turns out it's some like random cancer patient that they were operating on or something. And he's just like scoops this guy up and puts him in his car and like drives away.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how the movie ends?
Yeah, it's like him driving and then like you seeing the flashes of realizing, oh, this is some fucking random guy in the back seat who needed whatever surgery was happening.
So he's
when
killed
he
a
interrupted
third
it.
person.
Yeah, because he gets a gun at some point from like a security guard or a cop, and then he goes down into the belly of hospital, and then he shoots people and thinks he's rescuing his daughter and his wife, but he's not. It's so obvious like that's going to be the twist.
Well, we kind of guessed it, and we haven't even seen
Yeah,
it.
I know, and that's what's so crappy about this movie is that it is exactly what you'd expect. Like, to me, it would be more interesting if it was the whole, like, organ harvesting thing and they were making people disappear, not the fact that he made it all up in his head because he's either A, crazy, or B, killed them and went crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of a bummer. And also, Sam Worthington's just not very good.
He's not a good actor.
He's terrible in everything.
His accent very much comes and goes. Like, there are points where you're like, wait, what?
But here's my thing. Poor Sam Worthington. Apparently, if you're in a James Cameron movie that is the biggest movie of all time, you're either Kate and Leo or you're Sam Worthington. So
Yeah.
you can't be, you got to be Sam Worthington, I guess, sometimes.
I would feel worse for him if he was better.
Exactly.
I would feel worse for him if he was a better actor.
Like,
because I don't feel like I'm missing him in things.
No.
Like, I see movies when he's in, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's here. But I see other roles that he could have played over the past decade or so, and I'm like, no, I don't feel like he's missing.
You make a good point for totes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to sound callous. Like, I'm not just shitting on Sam
I'm
Worthington.
sure he's just surviving just
to
fine.
me, he's just so, like, mediocre that I'm like, I don't think that he should be working more, even though he was in one of the biggest movies of all time.
Right, but he's just not talented, and he's not memorable, and he's not even so bad. He's interesting to watch.
Right, he's not like Nicolas Cage.
He's not Tab
No!
Hunter. Oh, you say Nicolas Cage, I say Tab Hunter.
Hunter.
All right.
You know, generational divide. No, not really. But.
So yeah, Fracture, I mean, was disappointing, but it was about what I expected.
Okay.
It went an obvious direction. It was medium thrilling. It was just like middle of the road. Like, okay, this is kind of interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes. And then
Slightly douchey.
when you get at the end,
Okay.
The thing of it is that if it's going to be a formulaic, predictable, mystery or thriller, you got to dive really deep into exploring the topics that you're featuring on screen. So like if it was a really compelling look at, alcoholism and how it can, destroy a person's life or mental illness or whatever, that might be really interesting. And then it doesn't have to be, all these twists. But
paint by numbers.
Right. But if you're not having that kind of depth and complexity, then you have to have something interesting narratively. So
Yes.
I would say that element that you're talking about is what would set this movie apart from the other movie I'm going to talk about, Black and Blue.
Well, let's talk about Black and Blue.
Yes. I'm excited to hear about that.
So Black and Blue is a thriller which does very much follow kind of the expected beats, but it is a lot more interesting because it is very tense moment to moment, but also because it gets at some of those deeper things that you wouldn't necessarily expect a movie like this to go for. Naomi Harris plays a New Orleans cop, and her backstory is that she left, I believe, after Katrina and went and joined the army and served in Afghanistan, and she's come back to the area. Her
Almost
mom
sounds like a true story.
Seems like it could be.
Yeah.
So her mom has passed away. She's a cop. She's like, essentially a rookie. What happens is that she's from the area, so like she sees some people that she knew when she was a kid, but they've basically forgotten her or pretend they don't know her anymore because it's just like they're in such different places. It's like she's a cop. She sees Tyrese, which is a guy she knew growing up. He works at like a local convenience store. He's kind of rough around the edges, ex-con kind of guy. And this other girl that she was friends with growing up has kind of fallen in. She has like a 10-year-old son, and she hangs out with guys who are like local gangsters. And so what happens is her partner, who's played by Reed Scott, so he's her partner, and what happens is like he says, it's date night with my wife, looking forward to seeing her, and the commanding officer comes in and says, I need somebody to work a double, and he goes to Reed Scott and says like, you're up. And he's like, no, come on, it's date night. And so Naomi Harris says, yeah, no, I'll do it for him. And he's like, okay, well, you ride with such and such guy. And then she goes to see this guy, and he's hanging out with all these narc cops, and they're laughing. And the ringleader of these narc cops is Frank Grillo. So that should tell you what's what's going to happen.
I'd like to see Frank Grillo play against type. Just
that
once.
Would be nice.
I know. He did in one of those Purge movies where he was like kind of the good guy.
There's the second one, whatever.
The second one, I think. So yeah, so she's gonna ride with this like older guy, and they show that there's some interaction where they pull up to a fight and they break it up, and the other cop, he just immediately escalates things and puts a gun. He's also a black cop. He puts a gun to the back of this guy's head and is like, I'm gonna blow your brains out if you don't like sit still. And Naomi Harris is telling him to back down. And her whole thing is that like she is all about body cams. And so she has her body cam on her. She turns it on, even though other cops don't. And, they don't want to do it. But she's like, I'm in this to help people. And if I'm doing my job, I got nothing to hide. So I'm always going to wear my body cam, have it turned on. She tries to de-escalate the situation where, the other cop's got a gun to this guy's head in public. She's screaming at him like, back down, back down. And it turns out the guy had a gun in his back pocket, and he was potentially going to come and shoot her. So she feels guilty. And she's like, okay. Later, like, I'm sorry about that. And he's like, don't be sorry. Like, don't make the mistake again or you'll be dead. And so he gets a mysterious call on his phone. She's like, well, that's weird. And he gets in the car and they drive. It's like an overnight shift, so it's like the early morning hours. And he drives this like abandoned factory area. Feels very RoboCop in a way. And so he's like, stay in the car.
Like all of a sudden they're in old Detroit.
It feels very much like that. There's definitely this element of like this city that's fallen on hard times, has seen better days. It's very, lots of abandoned structures and people who have fallen on even harder times because of, the hurricane and everything. And so, yeah, he pulls up and he's like, I got to go deal with some stuff. You stay in the car. And she's like pissed, but she's doing it. And then she sees this kid walk up to there's a car, like a Chevelle or something, fancy muscle car parked like a few spaces up. And some kid goes over and like tries to steal it in front of her. So she gets out and chases him. And as she's chasing him, she hears gunshots from inside the building. So she goes in there. She's got her body cam on. she peers around this corner and sees the cop that she rode with, Frank Grillo, and one other guy. And they've already killed one of the drug dealers, and Frank Grillo kills the other drug dealer.
Oh, shit.
And she sees it all happen. It's all on her body cam. They realize that she's there, that she's got the body cam, and Frank Grillo's partner, who's like this young, dumb guy, just immediately just tries to shoot her and kill her. She gets shot, and she's wearing a vest, so she falls through this, like, weakened, like, floor into this, like, pile of garbage. And then the movie from there is, like, her running and trying to get this body cam footage back so that she can nab Frank Grillo and his guys for this murder, and make it back so that Frank Grillo and them don't kill her in the meantime. And so there's like, it's very tense, and it's just lots of situations where like initially she like makes it a few blocks away, and then like she sees some other cops, and then quickly like they stop for her, and then she quickly realizes that they're with Frank Grillo. Like she hears him on the radio. It's like, oh, I got her. And then she's like, fuck. She keeps running. She's like trying to go to houses, and people are like, no fucking way. I'm not letting you in here. Not letting you in my house. Like, I don't need this shit. And so she slinks into the back of the convenience store where Tyrese is, and he doesn't want to help her. But he reluctantly decides to help her because he finds out what happened, that she caught this murder on her body cam. And it's the right thing to do. She's very driven by her morals as a character. And that's what I think is the interesting part, is that you have this character who struggles with the fact that she is a cop and she wants to do the right thing, but she also feels a loyalty to people in her neighborhood and being from there. And there's like a part where the older cop that she was riding with says something like, oh, you're blue now. Like, you're not black anymore. You're blue. And this whole idea of like, where do her loyalties lie? Are they with the cops because she's a cop? Are they with the people from the neighborhood? Is it somewhere in between? Because like not all people in the neighborhood are good people. There's a gangster who's played by, I think his name's Mike Coulter. And
Mike Coulter.
Yeah,
he's great.
He's normally plays like cute and like cuddly, so it's kind of funny that he plays a gangster in this. But yeah, so it's like not everybody in the neighborhood is, roses and but yeah, there's that struggle of, where do my loyalties lie and how do I make it out of this? So it's like her and Tyrese helps her out, and she is trying to flee from Tyrese's apartment, and at this point the gangsters have found out that Tyrese has been helping her, so they come after him. And the cops have found out that Tyrese is helping her, so they're there, and there's lots of shooting. She gets away, but Tyrese gets nabbed by the gangster and his guys, so they take him back to their place, and they're, like, beating him for information. And the reason that they're beating him for information is that the dirty cop, Frank Grillo, was working with the drug dealers, and he has been in on the drug trade and running the drug trade, and there's a crackdown on corruption within the department, and so he feels like he's on the chopping block next. So he's just cleaning up and killing anybody who knows about his schemes.
As one does.
So since he knows the drug dealers and he knows the gangster played by Mike Coulter, he just says, "Oh, well, your nephew who got killed here, this rookie did it. This trigger happy rookie killed him."
Oh shit.
And so she has the gangsters and the cops coming after her. And she does a pretty aggressive thing. She goes to like the housing project where the gangsters are holed up, and she heard earlier in the movie that cops don't go in there. Her partner says like cops don't go in there unless there's a cop in trouble. So she goes into the housing project, and basically it's just like, here I am, so that like somebody calls the cops. And so that brings like the SWAT team and everybody in to try and help her. But they, the captain and everybody thinks that she's guilty of killing this drug dealer. And Frank Grillo
but
is
she's got
after
the body
her.
Cam.
She does. So
that should exonerate
she
her.
uses that as her bargaining chip with the gangsters. They download the footage, they see it, and then they're on her side. So they like help her get away. But
wait, the gangsters do?
The gangsters help her. Yeah. And then there's just like this crazy tense showdown with Frank Grillo in this housing project where cops and SWAT are swarming around. And what happens is that Tyrese is there with her, she gives him her vest, and he finds a jacket, like a police jacket, and he goes to the station and he uploads the footage for her. So it reaches the captain. That's how the captain finds out that she's innocent. And then the captain orders like everybody on SWAT to like stand down at the last possible second. Basically, she's wrestled Frank Grillo in this insane fight, and she's got a gun on him. And then all the SWAT guys have their laser pointers on her. And then that's when they realize, oh shit, Frank Grillo's the bad guy. So it's very satisfying, you know, almost wish fulfillment at the end, because, you know, Frank Grillo's the bad guy. He gets arrested. People know he's guilty. And then literally seconds before, you know, the SWAT guys were going to kill her. And then they're like, no, good job, West. Like, good job. And so, yeah, it is very much like wish fulfillment at the end, because it's like he gets arrested. The other guys that were in his crew got shot and killed in the shootout at this housing project. And, the person who kind of saves her from Frank Grillo at the last minute is her partner. He shows up and he shoots Frank Grillo. Mm-hmm. And I completely fucking forgot to mention that the partner was like not in on it, but basically he was like a bystander. Like he knew that bad shit was going on. Oh. And so he like wasn't doing anything about it. So she goes to him early in the movie for help and then realizes he's with the other guys. So she flees. It's really good.
Sounds fun.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah. It's tense. It's entertaining.
Sounds like Training Day.
Yeah, it does.
It definitely has that going on.
So I'm curious, because her background sounds so interesting and, you know, conflicting in a way. And obviously what happens with Frank Grillo, but is there kind of any kind of even minor discussion or exploration about, because I know you said like people in her community are saying, oh, you're blue, you're not black. Is there any kind of look at police brutality and like that's why she's very pro body cam, or that's, you know, kind of a talk about that's why cops should be pro body cam?
There is that for sure. There's a scene when she sneaks into the convenience store. Tyrese hears noises in the back and he trips the silent alarm. And so some cops come to the store and she has to like hide again. Mm-hmm. And they, from the minute they walk in the door, they basically assault Tyrese and like pin him down and like put a gun to his head and like to the point where he's physically in tears from it.
Jeez.
And later in the movie, when he ends up back in the police station and he's uploading the footage, one of the guys, the guy who held him down earlier, walks in the door. And he, you know, he keeps like kind of a low profile, but then the guy comes back and is like, wait a minute, I knew you. And so he like pins Tyrese down again and puts a gun to his head. And then there's like a moment
in the police station.
And then there's a moment.
Weird.
Then there's a moment where he gets distracted. So Tyrese takes the gun and pins him down and puts the gun to his head and is basically like, this doesn't feel so good, does it? like you've scarred me. You've traumatized me from this. Like, this is fucked up that you do this to people. And, like, you should feel what it's like for just a second to be in my shoes and to have to endure this. No one should have to endure this, basically. So, yeah, there actually is that in the movie.
Good. I mean, there should be 100%. Because I was kind of curious about it just because, you know, I think it's a Black filmmaker who directed it, and I think I could be wrong. And you know, obviously Naomi Harris is starring in it, and Tyrese. But yeah, I was curious if they were gonna, you know, kind of have this, you know, pristine view of police force.
Oh, certainly not.
If they were going to look at the more, you know, problematic elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's directed by Deion Taylor. It's
yes, that's right.
It does. And that's what I think is so good. I think that's what's so good about it, even though it does feel like wish fulfillment at the end, that everything's kind of wrapping up nicely and like the bad guys get put away and she's doing great. And, you know, it's the kind of thing, because he's not wrong. But earlier in the movie, her partner says something like, no, you don't take this to IA. You take this to the captain and you get those guys fired. Like you don't blow this up into something bigger. And he's not wrong about that, because cops do frequently turn on each other. You know, like it's kind of an unspoken rule not to go against each other. And so, yeah, it's an intense thing that she's taking on, and they don't treat that lightly, which I like in the movie. You know, it's a struggle for her and from all sides. And that's part of what adds to the tension of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Naomi Harris is always great. She's fantastic
so good
in everything. Yeah.
I like Naomi Harris. She's cool.
She is cool.
Yeah.
She's great in Moonlight. She's great in that Nelson Mandela biopic that I did not like. but
Which
she was great
one?
in it.
The one with
I think it was
Idris
Mandela.
Elba?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not like the film, but she was
No, it wasn't
fantastic
great.
in it.
Huh. Well, anything else to say, Evan? Other than see it.
No, I mean, I actually was just surprised to learn that Deion Taylor also directed The
The
Intruder,
Intruder.
which I saw earlier this year and also very much liked. So,
All
Yeah.
right.
good year for Deion Taylor.
Yeah. Big spoiler piece here for Deion Taylor.
Kudos.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, anyway, I feel like I did a poor job. I was telling some stuff out of order, but it is really good. It's tense. There's some good material there to transcend the idea that it is kind of by the numbers in terms of being about police corruption and that kind of thing.
I mean, I have to say, like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I don't want to see that. Like, it looked very, other than Naomi Harris, it looked like it was going to be very formulaic. So you've actually convinced me that I should check it out.
You should.
It's time that our newest co-host learned the proper terms. You've been spoiler pieced into wanting to see it.
Correct.
If you recall how it goes. Well, good. I have been spoiler pieced into wanting to see it too.
Nice.
So, yeah.
We should put that on a t-shirt.
I've been spoiler pieced.
I've been spoiler pieced.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So let's talk about Knock Down the House and
Let's talk
the
about
other political drama, not drama, although I suppose it's dramatic.
It is dramatic, but it's a documentary. Yes.
Where's my Roy Cohn?
Yes.
Where's my hat? Where's my Roy Cohn? So
Where's my raincoat?
yeah, well let's talk about Knock Down the House because I saw
Yes.
that one too.
Yes, let's talk about that.
And it's a Netflix documentary,
It is.
which it kind of transcends the Netflix documentary feel, but at the same time, it's very watchable.
Very.
At the same time, I don't think I learned anything I didn't already know. Although I will say it's important the things they're bringing up, but
100%.
I am definitely, I think, more. I read more about the politics than the average person, I think. So
Sure.
I am not surprised and didn't learn anything I didn't already know about either her being AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or the three women who they also profiled. Although it ends up being an AOC documentary kind of by default because she's the
Right.
only one who wins her race.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what I was saying this off mic before we started recording. I'm very curious if the two women who made this film, if they changed their, because they also edited, and also one of them was the editor and one of them was the DP because the budget was so tiny they had to do double duty as writer and director and DP and editor. I'm curious if the footage would have been edited differently and all four women would have gotten equal coverage if their races had gone very differently. But I have to say, yeah, I didn't learn anything differently. I, too, like to think I'm very well read in politics. I also used to work kind of in a political capacity, sort of. Yes. So should I say? I
No,
feel
you
weird.
don't have to. If you
don't
want
care.
to,
If you want to.
whatever.
No, I just feel weird. Like
you can
it
be
feels...
as open or as not open
Oh,
on
I
the
like to be
shows
open.
you like.
I'll be open. Yeah, I used to work at a university where I coordinated a political training program for women grad students to run for office, and it was an absolutely incredible
Sexist
experience.
much? Sorry. I was a little delayed on that one. I was like, should I say yes?
You're like, yes, I should say this.
Yeah.
I should say this ridiculous thing.
Yeah. That was a gag for anybody who's just listening to the show for the first time.
Because yes, Dave is not really horrible
Yeah.
at all.
Thank you for putting it that way.
You're welcome.
Was there anything from your work experience that you feel like really came through in the documentary? Like,
Great question, Evan. And yes, there is. So
Unplanned question
it
also. I
was
might add.
unplanned. We did not confer on this beforehand. Yeah, so this really is an AOC documentary, which I'm kind of okay with because she's such an incredible
For charisma
figure.
alone.
Yeah, charisma alone, she's incredible.
Yeah.
She's very magnetic to watch. But yes, something she says kind of early on in the documentary, she talks about how she never thought about entering politics until she was approached by Justice Democrats.
Right. She was
group.
singled out by them,
Yes,
right?
because
Yeah.
her brother nominates her because they were looking for non-career politicians to kind of flood every single primary with people who were working class and people of color and women. And they didn't say queer candidates, but I'm sure they included them too, or I'd like to think. But anyway, yeah, so she was approached to run for office this way. And when she said that she never thought about running for office, but she knew she had to do it once she was approached because who else would do it? what has always stayed with me, there's two things that always stayed with me from my previous job many moons ago, is that women have to be asked to run for office. Most women do not run for office thinking, hey, I should run for office. I can do it. Whereas men typically do. They think they can do it. They think I can do anything, so I'm going to do it. Women need to be specifically asked, and usually multiple times. And the other thing that I learned is that I worked at a very, not to sound braggy, but I worked at a very prestigious university, and the women who I worked with in this program were so ridiculously qualified. They had these impeccable resumes. They had master's degrees, or they were working on their master's degrees. They worked at NGOs. They worked in the White House. They worked all over the world. They had these just incredible life stories, and they still thought they weren't qualified to run for office. They thought they needed more education. They needed more experience. They needed more training, more this, more that. And no, they didn't. They could have run like probably 10 years earlier and been great. So those two things really stuck with me. And when AOC says that, I'm like, this is it right here. This is what women need to hear. So they will run for office. And especially not just women, because I mean, I'm all for women running for office. But the problem is that a lot of women who run before 2018, a lot of women who ran and would run were white women, were straight white women who were rich. And that's not who we need in office. We need more women of color. We need more queer women. We need more, working class and poor women. We need, women who are disabled. Like, we need so much diversity. And yeah, it's just not happening. I mean, even still, when you look at the stats, women in Senate are 25% and women in Congress are 27%. And that's the highest it's been because there was such a huge jump last year. It's like the biggest jump since the 90s as far as increasing numbers of representation of women. But it's still not enough. So, yeah, I didn't learn anything either from this documentary. And I kind of wish there had been a little more information. But even that, I don't know if that was necessary, because I feel like this documentary is really about... It's about all four women running, but really specifically about, AOC running and the struggles that she had. And I thought it was interesting when she talks about the ballot signatures, like how she needs 1,000 ballot signatures, but because
10,000.
Yeah, she actually needed 10,000 because she can be any signature can be disqualified for like the slightest infraction.
I don't remember what the number is that they come up with, but I do remember a friend of mine. This is so California. A friend of mine was trying to get a question on like a ballot question on the California. I don't remember what year did I live there? 2006, 2000, whatever. Let's say 2006.
Sure.
Let's just make up a threshold. The threshold is 10,000 signatures. They were advised to get 50,000 because it's just like so many will be disqualified that you have no idea. But you can find 50,000 signatures on nights and weekends, sure.
Sure.
So,
but I mean, it's absolutely like bonkers to think that you need that many signatures just to get on the ballot, not for any other reason, but just to be able to, be on a primary and, have someone vote for you or to have a question be on the ballot. Like, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, and seeing her kind of canvass and pound the pavement, like, that was great. And I loved that we see her campaign, like, literally from like almost day one. Yeah. So that was really cool to kind of see a campaign from start to finish. But the one thing I didn't like was that I feel that the other three women get such like shortchanged, like, because we don't really see their campaigns. Like, we just see such, small amounts.
In defense of the filmmakers, the woman from Missouri, she's a little dull on camera. I don't remember her name, probably because she's dull on camera.
Cori Bush.
Although, I mean, I think part of the point of her whole section was she was running against an institution.
Yes.
Like, she was trying to primary somebody who was a congressman for however many terms he's been congressman, but then his father was the congressman before him. So there's that. And then you have Arizona, who cares? And then you have
Nevada.
Nevada. See, exactly. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Was she from Carson City? Where was she from?
I don't know,
Nevada?
but she was Amy Villela.
Yeah.
So I don't know what
she was actually cool. I kind of liked
cool.
her. And then there was the West Virginia
Paula Jean Swearingen.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many names. So, these things happen. You can't.
No, I know, but especially Cori Bush. I hope that's her last name. I'm like saying that's her last name. she talked about how she lived 6 minutes from Ferguson,
Right.
and she talked about, being a nurse going down to Ferguson and, helping out, when people were injured. And that's a fascinating story. And I would have loved to have heard more about that and more that she was doing in her community.
Yeah.
And, and I also thought it was interesting when Paula Jean Swearingen was talking about I don't know what kind of campaign function she was at, but she's talking about how children should be able to have a glass of water, or anybody should be able to have a clean glass of water.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I was like, that's great. I want more of that. And it's not there. And so everything about AOC is great. But
you're also presuming that it was there and it didn't make it into the movie.
That is true. And it might not have been there. That's a completely fair thing to say, that the footage just might not have been there.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're quite welcome.
Not my first time.
Not your first rodeo. Yeah. I really liked the documentary too. I liked that it was a very behind the scenes look at campaigning, which I don't think, if you've never worked on a political campaign or if you've never run for office, you don't necessarily know all the ins and outs.
What a fucking grind it is.
It is such a grind. That it is tedious. It is annoying. There's a lot of work to it.
To your point earlier, one of the things that I liked about it was that you see AOC doing all of this shit that she's got to do, and then you see her go to work and tend bar.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh my God. So you basically spent all day doing this, and then you went to work and you're filling up the fucking ice bucket to take it upstairs from the basement where the ice maker is.
Yeah.
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 I mean, she's doing real... I mean, not that she's not doing real work in Congress, but...
different kind of work.
You're fucking doing... Well, this is, let's take a moment and thank our servers of the world. I mean, that's work.
That is work.
It's like...
Being a server was the hardest job I ever had in my entire life. It's backbreaking. It can be demoralizing.
The hardest job I ever had, working in a grocery store. You know why? Because it's not the same as the service industry, but people treat you like shit because you work in a grocery store and they think you're an idiot.
That's true.
I mean, I am an idiot, but I was also 19.
But you shouldn't have been treated like an idiot.
Exactly. So
yeah, no, but that is incredibly impressive. You're right that she's doing, she's working 2 full-time jobs, in order to do this.
But I think I would have preferred just a documentary about her.
I agree.
As opposed, because it's also pretty short. It's around 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, we could have spent 90 minutes just on her. And, I know we didn't have the budget for the other 3. It's like, let's make a documentary about 3 failed campaigns.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And failed in air quotes, because I don't think that they failed necessarily.
No, not at all. Because that's the other thing that AOC says to Amy Vilela when she loses, is that in order for the movement to go forward, we need 1,000 of us to run, even if only one of us gets through.
Right.
So, so they're not failures by any means. I mean, these women are incredible. And they all took on incumbents. And that's the other thing, too, is that one of the biggest there's a couple big obstacles to running for office. One is fundraising, and the other is incumbency. Like, people don't realize how incredibly difficult it is to run against an incumbent. And the fact that AOC did it, again, like, there hadn't been an election in 14 years is just...
Yeah.
Wow.
A primary election, right?
A primary, right. And the guy, Jim Crowley, he actually never had run. He had been appointed.
Right.
So, but I agree with you. It would have been very different and potentially, I don't know if I'd say better, but it would have been interesting just to see the documentary on her and maybe a separate documentary on the other 3 women. Yeah. But I wonder if they also didn't do that because if you're doing a documentary on failed elections, like, that's kind of demoralizing. Whereas, like, I'm wondering if that's also the, rationale there.
Maybe. Could be. Yeah. I didn't think that part through. But anyway, we like AOC. Well, I'm sure she'll be running for president in 2024.
God, I hope so.
Shall we go to Where's My Roy Cone?
Yes, actually.
Where is my Roy Cone?
I think I have one in the trunk of my car.
Yeah.
I put it out sometimes when there's snowbanks.
To hold your space.
Hold my space.
Do you do snow angels around your Roy Cone?
I got my keys, got my lip balm, got my Roy Cone. Isn't that what you said? Your lip balm? Yeah.
Yes. I don't go anywhere without my lip balm. I have like 20 lip balms around my house.
I need them. I got lip balm so much. I'm like Jackie Childs with a lip balm. So
Jackie Childs. Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not his lip balm, it's Kramer's, but still.
Yeah. He's commandeered it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Where's My Roy Cohn is a perfect dovetailing into this, it's a perfect dovetail to go from Knock Down the House to Where's My Roy Cohn, because you have two ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Knock Down the House is about, amazing women running for office, putting in the hard work and trying to make the country have more inclusive and diverse representation. And Where's My Roy Cohn is all about Roy Cohn, who was a lawyer who is described in the documentary as vicious, evil,
a real son of a bitch.
Yes,
I'm just making that
a
up.
political puppeteer.
Isn't he played by James Woods in a movie?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
so you know he must have been an asshole if they're having James Woods play him.
Correct. So he's passed away, but he was a lawyer, and he was a lawyer who worked with Hoover during the McCarthy trials, and he actually advised on how to interrogate witnesses. And he also was a lawyer for mobsters. And he also was buddy-buddy with Donald Trump, and he considered Donald Trump his protege.
And was it, did you say
yes.
McCarthy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you did. Okay.
Yep.
I missed that.
Yep. And he...
buddy-buddy with Donald Trump.
Buddy-buddy with Donald Trump. He considered Trump his protege. And basically the documentary is... It's looking at his life, but it also is looking at how his life and himself, how he inserted himself into politics, and how his thread from back in the 50s led to where we are today politically with having Trump as president. And which is a really...
With an assist from Barry Goldwater.
Well, sure.
I'm going to throw that in there too.
Well, sure. Yeah, he didn't single-handedly do it,
Yeah.
although he would probably think he single-handedly did it. But it's interesting because it's looking at his connections to Reagan. It's looking at his connections to Nixon. And the documentary also looks at how he worked with media and manipulated the media and got them to, he would tell them, what to say, and so he could shape the media and shape public opinion and how he wanted. Well, what was also really interesting is that he was a registered Democrat, but he worked almost exclusively with Republicans, and he also was gay, but was completely closeted about it. And when he was asked about it, he would say, well, my personality doesn't fit and my lifestyle doesn't fit with being gay. And he also was Jewish, and he would completely divorce himself from his Jewish identity and from his queer identity. And it's really also disturbing because during McCarthyism, he basically would enable queer people to be persecuted, and even though he was queer himself. And he also died of AIDS-related complications, although he claimed he had cancer. He did not ever admit that he had AIDS. But he was seeking special treatment for his AIDS diagnosis while simultaneously the Reagan administration were denying the existence of AIDS. So the documentary looks at his really contradictory life and how his persona and his way of living completely was hypocritical and contradictory to what he was advising people to do and what he was telling people to do and the way he worked. And it's interesting comparing the two documentaries and seeing how, we have these women who are running and who are not career politicians and who, don't have any special advantages, and how, power is entrenched within our society within this documentary. So it's kind of interesting to see them as a double feature.
And was this one a Netflix documentary also?
No, this is in theaters right now.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, the politics documentaries, there seem to be a lot of them this year.
I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting that the next movie we're going to talk about is Parasite, which is...
Oh my God, I love this movie
which is
so
not
much.
a political movie, but it's kind of a political movie.
Oh, it's
because
100%.
Because it's about class struggle in South Korea. So it's interesting. I liked it. I didn't love it.
I loved it. So I'm going to start off just by saying, I know this is spoiler piece.
No.
I have to say it. I'm just going to say I think this film works better if it's not spoiled. So I'm not saying we shouldn't spoil it. We're going to spoil it. We're going to get into it.
Oh, you're giving the audience a heads up.
I'm giving a warning to the audience.
The name of the show is Spoiler Piece Theater. But okay,
there are people who tell me that they tune out for specific movies and then come back after they've seen them.
Who are these wimps? I'm just kidding, people who give us money. And potential people who give us money.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if there is a film that you want to perhaps wait to listen on until after you've seen it, I would say this is the one.
Okay, I just want to say before we go on, Rosebud's a sled. So anyway...
I think you're safe on that one.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I chose that one.
Do you know I actually had not seen Citizen Kane until 2 years ago, and I did not know Rosebud was a sled.
Oh,
I avoided spoilers.
That's impressive.
I'm a master at avoiding spoilers if I want to.
All right. Well, so Patreon, where's my mind? Parasite is about this family, this family, you know, husband, wife, son, daughter. Parents are probably in their late 40s, early 50s. Kids are in their late teens, early 20s. And they live in a semi-basement, I guess you would call it. That's what they call it. That's what the translation is in the movie. Because it's one of those basements. It's kind of like a half, you know, it's a walkout, you know,
right.
Like you can see the street, but you still have to go upstairs to get out of the apartment. And they're very poor. And they're all unemployed. Or actually, that's not entirely true. They all fold pizza boxes for a living, which is kind of funny, but it's not funny.
No, it's actually really sad. And they're also stealing Wi-Fi.
They're stealing Wi-Fi.
Their neighbor.
They're so poor that when, like, the neighborhood exterminator comes by to, like, exterminate the neighborhood, they leave their windows open so that it'll also get their apartment.
Yes.
So, and it's kind of played for a joke in the movie, but as the movie plays out, you realize... it's kind of funny until you see the rest of the movie, and then you're like, oh, this is kind of horrible.
Yeah, it's not so funny.
Yeah. And there's like a recurring gag about how their street is where all the drunks go and take a piss. So they're always just like trying to close their windows before someone pisses in one of their windows. So,
which is interesting too, because there's some great usage of the toilet in their apartment.
Yes,
some good toilet humor, huh?
Not humor.
I wouldn't call it humor.
It's not funny.
So it just so happens that the son, I can't remember any of the characters' names. And the thing that's funny is, like, I have seen pretty much all of these actors in other movies.
Yep, same.
One of my favorite movies from a couple years ago is called A Hard Day, and the guy who plays the rich father is the lead in that. And it's this kind of dark police comedy about this corrupt cop who is trying to get out of a jam that he's gotten himself into, and it's just like everything keeps going wrong. And it's got one of the best sight gags I've seen. I'll tell it to you off mic. But anyway, see A Hard Day if you're also into like South Korean movies. But anyway, this family, the son has a friend who's in university who's tutoring a rich young woman. She's like, I guess, the equivalent of like a high school junior, would you say, maybe? She's pretty young, whoever the student is.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant the mother. I was like,
No.
Yes, their daughter. Yeah, I would say she's probably in high school.
Because
she hasn't gone to college yet. He mentions
he's like, I'm going to ask her out, but only when she goes to college.
Right.
And it's like, well, you guys got more fucking like couth than most Americans, but all right.
Definitely.
But the son, the South Korean, the poor son, is not in university, so he has his sister who's a really good graphic designer, falsify some documents. And he becomes this young woman's English tutor. And then it turns out that this rich family has a young son who needs art therapy. And so he has his sister who's the artist. He like makes up some backstory about her and says, oh, her English language name is Jessica. And, and his English language name is Kevin.
Yes.
And, he brings her over and, of course they pretend that they're not related, that he's just doesn't even know her really. It's just like, oh, she's a friend of a friend. And she gets the art therapy job. And then she's getting a ride home from the rich guy's driver.
Oh, my God.
And she leaves her underwear in the car so they can, like, make it look like the rich guy has been having sex with his girlfriend, or the rich guy's driver has been having sex with his girlfriend in the car. They get him fired. And then his dad they get their dad the job to be the driver. So this is part of where the
Inserting
title
themselves.
This is
Yes.
part of where the title Parasite comes from. So they also get the housekeeper kicked out, and then mom gets the housekeeper job.
Ooh.
Yeah. So all
This is
four
sounding
of them,
interesting.
all four of them are
Because
employed
it is.
employed by the same family. And for the first hour of this movie, it's just this kind of really fucking funny. You're like, oh, it's this movie about this family of shysters.
Yeah, they're just
like a dark comedy.
Yeah.
Yep, just about, a tight, orchestrated plan of con artists. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, that's where this is going, and that's not where it's
No,
going
and then
at
the
all.
rich father is kind of appropriately douchey, and the rich mother is kind of appropriately kind of a dum-dum. But it's more like these are roles that they have taken on. It's not.
Right.
She's like not actually a dum-dum.
No.
She's decided she's going to play one.
Yeah.
And that he's going to play like the strong husband type.
Right, exactly.
And their kids are, whatever rich Korean
Yeah.
kids do. I don't know. Probably very similar to rich American kids.
And probably. But they're much more complex than that.
Oh,
which
for sure.
It would have been so easy to vilify them. And I mean, yeah, they do some really shitty things, like when they role play sexually to be poor people.
Yeah.
Oh, so cringy and gross.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they do some douchey things. But
And also,
they're
I have
not
to say, in
terrible.
that scene, by the way,
Yes.
a lot of like what looked like real touching of both of them. And it's
yes.
just like, man, these actors must be really comfortable with each other or just gritting their teeth. I'm not sure which one it is, but I hope they got fucking hazard pay for this shit. So there's that.
There is that.
I mean, how to describe the big change? Oh, so the rich family goes on a camping holiday.
Yeah, they go away camping.
And it's raining like a son of a bitch. And the fired housekeeper, who's been at this house basically her entire career, and you learn early on that the house was actually designed by a really famous architect.
Mm-hmm.
And he sold the house to the family, and
Yes.
she was his housekeeper.
Yes.
And he's like, you should keep her because she's amazing.
Right.
And so they kept her on, and she comes while the rich family is on their camping trip, and it's fucking pouring down rain. Did I forget something?
Well, before that, yeah, the poor family is all hanging out at the house.
Oh, right.
And they're like drinking all the booze
Like
and
living
eating
it
all
up.
the food. Yeah.
Totally.
And the daughter is in the bathtub watching TV. Yeah, they're completely living that lifestyle and
Yeah.
loving it. And it's all really like relaxed and calm. Until
And
the
then the
doorbell rings.
doorbell.
And then it's from that moment of the
Yeah.
doorbell ringing and the mother getting up, like it is just nonstop tense and nuts from that
Yeah.
point.
And
Till
even
the end.
when the doorbell rang, I don't usually have feelings like the doorbell rings. It's like, all right, it's coincidence, But I was like, wait a minute, this movie's too
Yes.
smart for this to be a coincidence.
Way too smart.
So I kept waiting. I didn't know what the shoe was going to be, and how I can always guess. I did not see this coming. So the fired
The shoe
housekeeper
dropped and it clamored.
Yes, it was not one of
There
those
was an
things
echo.
where we were in the woods and nobody heard it because I was the only, because there's no one there. Like the entire movie, and this is like a packed house that I saw this in, at mostly Korean, I might add. But also, so they weren't reading subtitles. I was. But anyway, the housekeeper rings the bell, and mom, new housekeeper mom goes to answer the door. And first thing that I noticed, and I'm sure everyone noticed, is the housekeeper has been like beaten up.
Yes.
Like and she never like somebody asked her like, what happened to your face, and she's like, it's not important, or whatever. But like,
yeah, that's pretty much it.
she says to the mom, everybody else the rest of the family hides, and she says to the mom who has taken her job, help me down here in the basement. And she's like, all right. So they go down to she takes a few, like the old housekeeper goes down, and when I say old, she is old in years, but I'm going to say old in
As
previous.
in like
Previous.
previous.
The
yes.
previous housekeeper.
Yes.
The previous housekeeper goes downstairs, and then mom is talking to her family. She's like, what the fuck is going on? I'm like, I don't know. But by the time mom gets down there, the old housekeeper has wedged herself against the wall,
Oh
and
my
she's
God.
trying to like push something open. And I thought it was going to be some like mythological creature is
Yeah.
hanging out back there and going to eat everybody. I had no idea what to expect.
I literally thought body horror was coming
Oh,
on
I
the
did
screen.
too.
I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? She's contorted herself. She's
Yeah.
a monster.
And
What is
also because
happening?
this is the same person who made Snowpiercer and Okja, so I'm just thinking something weird's
Yep.
going
And the
on.
host.
And the host.
Yep.
And it's weird, but not in the way you think it's actually kind of makes perfect sense. So it turns out there's like a hidden sub-basement back there that the current family doesn't know anything about because the previous owner who built the house didn't tell them about it when he sold it to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the housekeeper knew about it because she's been there her whole career. And she has stashed her husband down there because he's so poor that he's got so many debt collectors coming after him that he cannot live a life above ground.
Whoa.
So she sneaks food to him every couple, like 3 or 4 days worth of food to him. And the other family has no idea this is going on. So she's been gone for like a week, and he's nearly. He's not nearly starving.
Yeah,
but
he's
pretty. He's kind of gone a little bonkers. It would seem.
Yes, he's.
And who knows whether he was bonkers beforehand? But he's definitely a little bonkers now.
Yes.
So
that is correct. And there's also a really interesting laying of the groundwork for this, but it's really easy to miss or not really like question, is that the rich husband mentions to the father who's the chauffeur, he's like, the previous housekeeper, she was great, but the only bad thing is she would eat so much. I don't know why she was eating so much.
Yeah.
And
she ate enough for 2 people.
Yeah.
It was weird.
So it seems like such a kind of like fat
like
shamey
a total throwaway
comment.
line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's why she was eating so much, because she wasn't. She was feeding her husband.
She was feeding her husband. And what's interesting is I realized the husband says something at one point, like the housekeeper's husband says something at one point like, the reason he got so poor is because of the Taiwanese restaurant that went under, the Taiwanese bake shop. And like it turns out the father, who is now the chauffeur from the poor family, he had a bake shop that went under. So they're like, that's the reason he's in so much debt. So there's a lot of, similarity between the two of them, but it becomes a fight between the poors over who's going to scam off the rich.
Shit.
Yeah, that's true.
And it literally comes to violence over the whole thing. But then on top of that, the rich family comes back because it's raining so horribly that they just can't stay out wherever they're camping.
And they're coming back in 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Because like the cell phone service is bad or whatever, and can you please make us this udon dish and whatever, who the mom has no idea how to make, and she makes it perfectly with like the fucking amazing beef that's just left over, and you kind of I think if you watch this movie and you weren't quite sure. If you weren't looking at it with like a gimlet eye, you might think like, oh, the poor people are supposed to be the parasites. But the rich people are just every bit as horrible, maybe even more horrible. I mean, the poor people are poor people, and they're doing okay, so it's a little underhanded, whatever. But they're trying to survive, literally.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas the rich family is completely exploiting the poor working class for like their dog shit fucking dumbass whatever, Like it's literally like, all right, well, this dog gets this food because he's lactose. I'm making up the things, but like,
but you're kind of not.
No,
but
there are three dogs,
yeah.
and one of them gets this food, and the other two get this food, and they have to go for this walk, and it's like 18 minutes, whatever, And it's just the kind of shit that you hear the minutia of it, and you're like, only people who have so much time on their hands would think of this.
Yes,
and also. There's no reason you couldn't do these things yourself.
No.
Even though, I don't know. I'm not going to start making excuses for either of them because
no. But there's also a really great scene where the wife is struggling with the dishwasher.
Yeah,
like she's on the phone, like trying to get somebody. Like the new housekeeper, who's the mom, and she's like struggling with the dishwasher. Like, really, you don't know how to work a dishwasher?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't remember exactly how it it's because the rich family's coming home and they got to hide. The poor family has to hide the previous poor family, and so they kick the old housekeeper and clean up all of their shit, which they end up just throwing literally under the coffee table. And all of the three of the family is hidden under there. And it's then when the rich family is at their most candid, because they're watching their little boy camp out in the yard, their pristine, beautiful, perfectly manicured yard. Mm-hmm. They're watching him camp, and the rich parents are talking about how the driver, you always think he's going to cross the line, but he doesn't cross the line. He goes right up to it, and you're just like, this is just the kind of thing of fucking, like, I've known this guy who would say this shit. But then he starts talking about how the driver has like a particular smell, and it's like old radishes. And then you see the father under the table, like not look ashamed necessarily, but kind of he smells his own shirt.
Yeah, he does.
And he's just kind of like, eh? And they've already had a previous discussion where the little boy was like, hey, all 4 of them smell the same.
Yeah.
So they've started using 4 different laundry detergents to like do their laundry so they don't smell like they came from the, you know.
Oh, God.
And the smell is like a class,
Mm-hmm.
you know, thing.
Which I love. And also, Bong Joon-ho lays the groundwork for that earlier, too, with the stink bugs.
Right.
Because, like, yeah, they have a stink bug problem, like, in their apartment.
Exactly.
And, yeah, so smell continuously comes up as a class differentiation, which is so fascinating. And also, it's such an underutilized sense within film because obviously you're not smelling what's happening on screen.
Right.
So it's so great.
Unless you're watching a John Waters movie, I guess.
Well, I guess there's that. But yeah, but it's so great that he is a filmmaker who, you know, keeps that present in his films. And I love that.
So the poor family that's currently working for the rich family kicks the old housekeeper down the stairs, not intending to harm her, but basically gives her a concussion. And you learn that a pretty fucking serious concussion. And of course she dies, but
not right away.
Not right away. It takes her a while. But the next day after the rainstorm, to celebrate the little boy's birthday, rich mom calls all the friends and whips together, with the help of you know, mom the housekeeper now, a rather extravagant last-minute birthday party.
Yes.
Complete with, you know, the friend who plays cello and the friend who sings opera and, you know, all this stuff. And Kevin, he goes down the stairs and he discovers that the old housekeeper is most assuredly dead.
Yeah, because I think he's feeling guilty, and so he wants to check on them to make sure they're okay.
They're okay. And he gets basically noosed by the man living down there who tries to strangle him to death. And Kevin gets away, sort of, but then the rope catches on something as he gets into the regular basement as opposed to the sub basement, and he, like, you know, it's like when your dog jerks against the leash,
right?
He's like, yipe, and he falls on his back, and there's this rock thing that the rich friend of Kevin gave him as like a, hey, you have this artifact, it'll bring you wealth. Well, the poor guy living in the basement picks it up and whacks Kevin a couple times on the head with it, and Kevin's bleeding out. Then he goes upstairs and he gets a knife from the kitchen. Very casually. And he just walks into the backyard and you're like, well, who's he going to kill? So,
and then again, it's a kid's birthday party.
It's a kid's birthday
More
party.
horror at a kid's birthday party.
Call back
like
to
the
our Patreon
Omen.
segment.
Yeah. So, long story short, Jessica, the poor daughter, gets stabbed basically in the heart.
Yeah.
You can tell she's not long for this world. Although it's even kind of turned into comedy in that moment because she's like, you know, her father's trying to like press on the wound to stop the bleeding. She's like, don't do that. She's like, Dad, don't do that. It hurts.
Yeah.
You know, but it's kind of like she's drunk because she's losing so much blood. She's starting to get loopy. And it's not funny, but at the same time, it's like, it is almost a comedy of errors kind of thing because everything just happens. Even though it's literally happening in slow motion on the screen, it's still, everything is happening so quickly. It's really smartly edited.
Yes.
The poor dad driver ends up stabbing rich dad to death. And then...
Oh, but wait.
And then somebody skewers...
Yeah. The reason why poor dad stabs rich dad is fascinating, and the reason is because
the smell.
It's the smell
with the keys.
Yes, because he goes over to the husband who is living in the basement to get his car keys so they can take the son to the hospital because they think he's having an asthma attack. And
the husband, the guy living down in the basement has been literally skewered.
Yeah.
So he's dead. But he's landed on top of the car keys when he hits the ground.
So he lifts up his body, and then the rich dad makes like he wrinkles his nose like, ew,
and he
smells.
holds his nose as he's like he holds his nose with one hand and like knees the other dead guy in the back and picks up the keys. And then poor driver dad sees that and he's like,
I'm having fucking none of this shit.
He's like, fuck this guy. And he goes and just gives him a nice big stab right through the sternum. And so rich dad is dead, you find out. And then poor dad escapes somewhere. And it turns out while all the guests are fleeing, he runs back in through the garage and goes back down into the sub-basement. And there's like a lighting system that you can work from the sub-basement. And so it comes up that they all know Morse code because, you know, they're all of the age where you used to learn more. And it's like a plot point. and he writes a letter and he Morse codes it every day. And then Kevin, who recovers from his head wound, he has a couple of surgeries, and he and his mom go on trial, and they're found not guilty because horrible shit happened to them, basically, but they're put on probation. But then he's looking at the house because the rich family has moved away. And there's a German family living there now, which is the source of a couple of jokes. But he sees the lights going on and off, and he realizes it's Morse code. So he learns Morse code to see what the letter is. And there was this moment earlier in the movie when his dad says to him, don't make plans.
Right.
Because if you make plans,
it never
then
works out.
Something always goes wrong. It never works out the way you want it to. So the father writes this letter about how I'm down in the basement and one day you'll find me. And then the son writes a letter and he's reading it and it says, blah, blah, blah. Here's my plan, Dad. I'm going to be rich and I'm going to buy the house and I'm going to get you out of there. And the movie ends with like his fantasy of like
them being reunited. Yeah.
But then you turn out he's just writing this letter in their poor sub-basement apartment or their half basement or whatever they call it. And he's like, but that's my plan, and I'll see you again soon. And you realize, oh, it's never going to happen because it's a plan, and plans don't work out.
Right. And in the first frame mirrors the second or the final frame, in that they both begin and end in their apartment, which comes full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
It sounds really good.
It's amazing. There's so many incredible visual touches. Like, I mean, there's the smell, which is amazing to utilize, but also there are quite a few static shots of the staircase on like the left side of the frame, and then the kitchen on the right side, and people will be doing things in the kitchen, and people are going up and down the stairs, and it just felt like to me like it was, you know, kind of like an upstairs downstairs thing where it's showing class just based on the stairs, or like people hiding, you know, behind the stairs.
Yeah, and one of the things is also interesting is the poor family, you always see them huddled together.
Yes.
And I use the word huddled because they're quite literally huddled together in some places.
Absolutely.
But you almost never see the rich family, even in the same room. Even if they're in the same room, one's over here, one's going up the stairs, you know.
Yep.
Like, it's really this movie is meticulous.
Yes, and the rich people are utilizing space because they're used to space,
right?
Whereas the poor people are not. They're huddled together because they've had to huddle together, literally and metaphorically.
And I knew I had a vague awareness of like Korean class, you know. I don't know, problems. Is that the right word? There's a big income disparity in South Korea,
there is,
you know, which I was aware of, but not to the degree that it's like become like a subgenre in Korean filmmaking.
Yeah, it has.
There's like in the last decade or so, you know, one or two movies, big deal movies in Korea come out a year about upstairs, downstairs culture, basically, for lack of a better term. I can't think of anything that quickly. So yeah, it's just kind of a fascinating. You know, it's not that different from rich people and poor people in the United States.
No, it's really not.
I don't know if anybody would make a movie this artful in the U.S. if an American filmmaker would. Maybe. I mean, you know, and it's in his or her own way, but
possibly. I mean, the way but it's interesting. I mean, because this is an American filmmaker, but still of, I believe, Korean descent. But Kogonada doing Columbus and the utilization of architecture and space. And the way things are, you know, framed, it felt very much to me like Columbus in that way. I mean, completely different, you know, exploring different topics, very different narratives, but kind of visually it reminded me of that. But yeah, I love how Bong Joon-ho is exploring class, and he explores it, you know, through food, and he explores it through smell, and he explores it through physical space. And I think meticulous is a perfect word to describe this film.
Yeah, thank you.
You're quite welcome. But yeah, I mean, he explored class great, obviously, in Snowpiercer, and he also, you know, explored, you know...
Snowpiercer is much more hit you over the head with it. Like, Snowpiercer's not subtle.
No, it's not
Whereas
subtle.
this, like, you don't even realize what's going on in this movie for the first hour. You just think it's this kind of funny, weird movie about these shysters. And then you realize, oh no, they're not the only shysters, are they? Everyone has got their own thing. Like, this is kind of... It's interesting that interesting. I just used the word interesting.
I know I use interesting a lot. It's
fascinating that
fascinating.
Yeah, that even though it does appear that our filmmaker friend is on the side more of the poors, it's actually a relatively neutral
It
look.
is. Absolutely. It's very balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that he doesn't make the rich people out to be demonic, or the that's demonic, not mnemonic, or the poor people out to be like, ooh, creepy because they're poor. It's just more kind of like, nah, this is how it is. I mean, it's a little heightened for the point I'm trying to make, but here you go. Mm-hmm. So
right, and I mean, there's some really we haven't even talked about this. Kind of like I was going to say segue, but we haven't even talked about this about the toilet. And,
oh right.
And again with smell, like, and how
yeah, we left out the fucking typhoon.
We talked about the flooding of the apartment, which happens before the terrible, disturbing children's birthday party. But yeah, in the very beginning of the film, when the two kids are trying to find cell service, they huddle next to the toilet and they're like leaning on the toilet. And then later in the film, the daughter, when everything's getting flooded, there's like, it's all sewage water, so it's shitty water, so there's like shit literally spewing out of the toilet onto her, and she's like getting a cigarette in like her hiding place and smoking, and it has shit on it, like it. Yeah. It's, anyway.
But she's also got some cash stuffed up there too.
She does.
So anyway,
she definitely does. But yeah, this is. I'm sorry, you were going to say.
I was going to say that's parasitic, but Parasite. Do you have anything else to?
It sounds more like that's fecal piece theater.
Nice. Yeah, I think that this film, like so many of his films, just combines, dark humor and tension and social commentary so well. But I think this is an incredibly fascinating and thought-provoking film on class.
He's smart, this guy. He's a looker. You got to look out for him. He's going to go places.
Yes.
So.
But yeah, I can completely see why this won the Palme d'Or, and and I know people have talked about how this is, one of the best films of the year or the best film, and I have to say it's definitely one of my
10
favorite.
For sure.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite. It's one of the best films I've seen this year. It's so good. Yeah. It's so tight the way it's edited and shot, and it's just riveting from start to finish.
It's kind of an Evan film, I think.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have more than adequately convinced me to see this movie.
Oh, good.
I mean, I was planning to anyway, but this sounds really good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's very good. So I think that's it for Parasite, which is definitely one of the best films of the year. I think it'll be in my top 10 list, unless something amazing comes out, It'll be number 4 or 5. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? But anyway, that's this week's episode of Spoiler Poos Theater. So I'm just going to start pronouncing it differently each time.
I was like, did you intentionally say spoiler poos?
Yeah.
Spoiler Pies Theater. Spoiler Poos Theater. And there are all kinds of places you can see the show, everybody. So find them wherever you can find a podcast. And if you want to get in touch with us, there are many ways you can do that. Mm-hmm. The tweets, the Instagrams, where we are Spoiler Piece or at Spoiler Piece. The emails, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. The phone numbers.
The hotline.
Yeah.
862-21-PEACE.
Yeah. You can call us and leave us a message and blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically everything. Also, please, if you have the time and or inclination and or money, throw us a few bucks to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/spoilerpiece. You get exclusive audio every week. We just had a great idea for a T-shirt. And,
You're welcome.
Yeah, and you never know if you kick in enough bucks, so you might get that going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that is the end of the show. Our movies this week, if you recall, were Fractured, Black and Blue, Parasite, Knock Down the House, and Where's My Heroic Cone. Very quickly, in the order I just said them: no, yes, 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 no. So,
what?
As in see them, don't see them. Yeah.
But you ended on a no. Parasite is a yes.
No. But I listed them. I read them in a different order than we just discussed them on the show. So,
okay.
Come on. You pay attention, kids.
Didn't you say don't see Where's My Roy Cone? Didn't you give that a
I'm
no?
sorry. I said no, but it was a yes. There was only one no this week, and that was Fractured. Yeah, Fractured is the only no this week.
That's why I was like, wait a minute.
More like Craptured.
Yeah. I beg
More
you.
like Crapsh.
I beg your pardon, listeners. So anyway, my name is Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly, Orlando Weekly. You can follow me on the tweets and the Instagrams as Dave Sees Movies. And thanks.
I'm Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer, editor of Bitchflix, member of BAFCA, and you can find me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent. I'm co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
That's right.
Yes.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.